Floods have always haunted the human imagination. They arrive without mercy, reshaping the world in hours. They don't just kill, they erase. But what if they also remember? Across the world, from ancient Sumer to the mountaintops of Peru, cultures that supposedly never met tell a strangely similar tale. A god, or many gods, send a flood to destroy a corrupt world. One man or a small group is warned. A boat is built, animals are gathered, the floods come, the world is wiped clean. And then the survivors begin again. Why does this story appear almost everywhere? Why does it persist in the memories of so many ancient peoples? Could it be a shared metaphor for the moral renewal, a cultural archetype that emerged independently across civilizations? Or is it possible, however unlikely, that these myths are fragments of real events, remembered and reshaped over millennia? Today we dive into the deep waters of history and explore what just might be humanity's oldest global story, the myth of the Great Flood. Let's begin where recorded history begins, ancient Mesopotamia. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known written stories in the world, gives us our first documented flood myth. Preserved on a clay tablet over 4,000 years ago, the story centers around a man named Utnapishtim, who is warned by the gods that a great flood is coming to destroy humankind. He is told to build a massive boat, seal it with pitch, bring his family aboard, and take animals of every kind to preserve life. When the storm comes, it's cataclysmic. The skies rage for days, the earth is swallowed, and when the waters finally recede, Utnapishtim sends out birds to find dry land. Eventually, his boat comes to rest on a mountaintop. He and his family survive, and he is granted immortality by the gods. Does that structure sound familiar? It should. It mirrors another story that billions of people know today. In the Hebrew Bible's book of Genesis, a man named Noah is chosen by God to survive a flood that will wipe out a sinful humanity. God tells Noah to build an ark, take his family aboard, and bring 2 of every animal. The rain falls for 40 days and nights. Everything is destroyed. Noah sends out a dove. When it returns with an olive leaf, he knows the world is drying out. Eventually, the ark comes to rest, again on a mountain. The similarities between the stories of Utnapishtim and Noah are so striking that many scholars believe the Hebrew story may be a direct evolution or reinterpretation of the older Mesopotamian myth. But that doesn't explain what comes next, because these stories aren't just found in Mesopotamia and the Levant, they're found everywhere. Travel east, deep into the Indian subcontinent, and you find yet another flood myth, this one thousands of years old and rooted in Hindu tradition. The Sapatha Brahma, an ancient Vedic text, tells of Manu, a wise man who is warned of a coming flood by a small fish. But this is no ordinary fish. It is Vishnu, one of the great gods of Hinduism in disguise. Vishnu tells Manu to build a boat and to bring with him the 7 sages, seeds of all plants, and representatives of all living creatures. When the flood comes, Manu ties his boat to the horn of the now enormous fish, who pulls him through the waters until they finally rest atop a mountain. The world has been destroyed, but life is preserved. From Manu, the next cycle of humanity begins. A divine warning, a massive boat, a chosen survivor, the death of a world, and the birth of a new one. Sound familiar? Now we cross continents, because even in the Americas, isolated from Eurasia for tens of thousands of years, we find the same story, told again in a different voice. The Aztec believed the world had already ended 4 times, and one of those destructions came by flood. In that version, a man and a woman survived by hiding in a hollowed-out tree. The Inca, high in the Andes, told of a great flood that swept the land, leaving only a few people alive on mountaintops. One such survivor, Manco Capac, would go on to found the Incan civilization. Among the Ojibwe of North America, a massive flood is said to have wiped away the old world. In this myth, a divine being recreates the earth by sending animals to dive beneath the water and retrieve bits of soil, which are then spread on the back of a turtle to form a new land. Again and again, we see the same core elements of flood, destruction, survival, and the rebirth of life from the chaos of the waters. These cultures had no contact with Mesopotamia, with India, or with one another, and yet the story survives. Why? So how do we explain this? One theory is that the Great Flood is an archetype, an instinctive symbolic story that arose independently across cultures. Water has always been terrifying and essential. Floods are universal disasters. It makes sense that ancient people would encode their fears and their hopes in these tales. Another theory is cultural transmission. Perhaps early myths from the Fertile Crescent spread over centuries along trade routes and were reinterpreted by new cultures as their own. But then there's a third possibility, less accepted but more compelling. What if many of these myths are based on real, ancient catastrophes? Around 11,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, glaciers began melting rapidly. Sea levels rose over 120 meters, or about 400 feet. Whole coastlines disappeared. Any human settlements built near the ancient shores would have been wiped away. Think of the Sunda Shelf in Southeast Asia, or the now submerged land bridges between the British Isles and mainland Europe. Then there's the Black Sea deluge hypothesis, a theory that a massive breach between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea around 5600 BCE caused a dramatic and sudden flood, drowning thousands of square miles of farmland and potentially inspiring the Mesopotamian flood stories. Are flood myths actually cultural memories of these real events passed down orally for thousands of years before being written down? Or, more provocatively, could they hint at a lost civilization now beneath the ocean, forgotten people who experienced floods that we've yet to discover in the archaeological record? Flood myths remind us of how small we are. They speak of divine judgment, of second chances, of survival against impossible odds. But perhaps more importantly, they tell us that certain stories endure, because maybe, just maybe, they're true in ways we don't fully understand. Were the Great Flood's metaphor, memory, or message? Maybe they were all three. In the end, we can't be certain what really happened, but the sheer consistency of these stories across cultures, languages, and continents suggests something powerful, something worth remembering, because even after the waters recede, the flood never quite leaves us.